In anticipation for the Beatles' Get Back film, we need to further understand these four men who made up the greatest band to ever exist. How did they end up here on the roof of Apple headquarters as an ending to their Let It Be project? Well, in order to get answers, we need to go very far back to the beginning. Let's get back to where it all started. It's the end of 1939 and World War II has begun. We are in Liverpool, the largest port on the west coast of England and of such significant importance to the British war effort. Amidst the war, Elise Starkey gives birth at home due to the projected bomb raid to Richard Starkey in July of 1940. Another woman named Julia Lennon is able to get to Liverpool Maternity Hospital in a rare pause of bombings. She births John Lennon in October of 1940. Over the course of the war, many docks and their neighborhoods are reduced to rubble. Liverpool suffers with the loss of 10,000 homes and 4,000 lives. The last air raid finally took place in January 1942. In the summer of 1942, Paul McCartney is born at Woolton Hospital. A couple months later, George Harrison is born at home in February of 1943. The war is over, and the young boys grow up with their playgrounds showcasing the devastating aftermath of the war. Now, let's take a look at each of their childhoods individually to better understand who they became as men. Richard Starkey grew up as an only child. It was at age 4 when his father left the family, which in turn left Richard and his mother in the lower economic class. His mother, Elise, would do many different jobs to bring money in. At age 7, Richard grew extremely ill. He stayed in the hospital for months, which in turn made him miss out on school. He eventually did come home, and all was well. Elise ended up remarrying a man named Harry Graves. Harry became the male figure in the home, which Ringo hadn't seen for a while. And it's only natural that Richard took after Harry's personality traits of being gentle, soft-spoken, and having a generous nature. According to the book Tune In, Volume 1, it was at age 14 when Ringo saw drums in the window of a music store in walking to school. Quote, he would look at it every day. The drums spoke to him and the thought of these drums were unshakable from his mind. Unquote. John Lennon's upbringing was complicated to say the least. His father, Alf, and mother Julia were in a tug of war, or should I say, a tug of love, with who would keep John. In the end, his father left to continue his career as a sailor, while Julia and John stayed in Liverpool. At age 4, John witnessed domestic violence between his mother and her boyfriend at the time. Aunt Mimi saw that Julia was unfit to be a responsible mother after hearing that John was sleeping in the same bed as Julia and her boyfriend. It was then that Julia's sister Mimi became the primary caregiver of John, and John didn't see much of his biological mother after this. Aunt Mimi and Uncle George raised John in a home on Menlove Street in a middle-class area of Liverpool. As a teenager, John played 2 roles. Inside the house, he was an avid reader, taking after Mimi. Yet outside the house, John was the leader of a gang. His group would scrap and steal. They were up to no good. John didn't care much about anything, especially academics. So he failed out of high school and was somehow accepted into Liverpool College of Art. He doesn't know where he's going in life and couldn't have a worry in the world. Paul McCartney was lucky enough to have a healthy upbringing. He grew up with his younger brother Michael, father Jim, and mother Mary. Jim was a musician and took the role of entertainer at family get-togethers. This made Paul naturally musically influenced by his father. Paul's mother Mary was a nurse, and she described Paul as being, quote, upbeat, smart, gifted, and a funny boy, unquote. From what we know, George Harrison also had a healthy upbringing. He was the youngest of his 3 siblings, his 2 brothers Peter and Harry, and his sister who was 11 years older. His mother Louise was a shop assistant and his father Harry was a bus conductor. George was an independent, fun-loving, free-thinking child. George recalls being as young as 3 years old when he was immersed in his family's love for country music. At the time, American country music was being brought from merchant seamen, and this was the start of George's musical influence. So we meet in 1955, when instruments are introduced in each of their lives. George receives his first guitar and is ecstatic. Paul isn't as excited to be gifted a trumpet by his father. And due to Richard spending most of his childhood at the hospital, he's unfit for manual labor or an office job. Therefore, Richie creates a passion for his drumming career. At this time, John's mother Julia comes back in his life. She sparks his interest in music and teaches him to play the banjo. Little do they know, music is about to take off. It's 1956. Elvis Presley releases his song Heartbreak Hotel. The Liverpool lads become so entranced by Elvis. The man, the song, the dance, all of it changes their lives because at this moment they realize music has to be a part of them. And their love for music only flourishes by other singles released this year, including Rock Island Line by Lonnie Donegan, Long Tall Sally by Little Richard, and Gene Vincent's Beep-Bop-A-Lula, which is the first record that Paul bought, and when John first heard the song, it gave him shivers down the spine. They are all so motivated by this music. George starts to take guitar playing seriously. Julia gives John his first guitar along with a red and white checkered shirt. And Ringo is gifted a full drum set by his stepfather Harry. Sadly, while everyone is celebrating music, Paul is mourning the death of his mother, who lost her battle with cancer. In a 2019 interview, Paul reflects on how the death of his mother affected his life.
I didn't think it had affected me musically. I just knew it was a tragedy. I got a younger brother, who's a year and a half younger than me. And to lose your mom at 14 is, not easy. So it was just very difficult for a few years, just trying to come to terms with it. But then I found music. I think then it gave you the impetus to just go and have a good life, which I know she would have wanted.
It's 1957. And the National Service will soon be calling all young men to fight in the war. Yet Richard, John, Paul, and George all get out of it. So how is this possible? Well, you'll have to subscribe and stay tuned for part 2.